Against hope he wouldn't be sniffed out. Another jolt of adrenaline pumped into Brant's veins as an ominous chill ran down his spine and raised the hair on the back of his neck. His instincts whispered that there wasn't going to be an escape from this one. He wasn't sure how much more of this he could take. The idea of being chased, of being caught, was slowly driving him insane. He had to do something, anything, to alleviate the awful sensation. Brant took a deep, steadying breath and stood abruptly. His head swam at the sudden movement. His vision dimmed and the alleyway spun around him. His heart lurched in his chest. Shaking his head, he caught his hand against the dumpster to steady himself and lifted the pistol. The weapon felt incredibly heavy and the barrel trembled. He swallowed and curled his finger to depress the trigger. Time slowed to a crawl. The last bullet left the pistol with a bang. The projectile whipped past the blood-covered man who ran down the alleyway toward him. It embedded into the wall with a splatter of brick. Shards of red stone sprayed the man and cut into his cheek. He was unaffected as he continued his mindless pursuit. Brant stumbled back, and the emptied Beretta fell from his limp hand to the pavement. He looked left and right frantically, thoughts blazing through his mind in a flurry, faster than he could catch them. His shot had missed? How had it missed when the target was so close? He was an expert marksman, for Christ's sake. He wasn't supposed to miss. Brant swore under his breath and mentally inventoried the weapons left on his person. There hadn't been much to begin with. Just the sidearm that now lay expended on the pavement and a rifle he'd abandoned once he had run out of ammunition for it, the extra weight of the spent weapon having been a hindrance. He took a couple of steps back and remembered the one weapon he had left. Brant knelt and pulled his K-bar knife free from the sheath strapped to the outside of his right boot. It wasn't much, and he wasn't sure how much damage the 7-inch blade could actually cause to one of these attackers, but it was all he had left. He stood just in time. The man launched himself at Brant, hands extended, animalistic hatred in his red-rimmed, bloodshot eyes. Instinct guided him as he lifted the knife sharply upward and stood from his kneeling position. In one smooth move, Brant slammed the knife's blade into the fleshy underside of the man's lower jaw. To Brant's dismay, the man's gnarled hands closed in tight fists in his shirt, and he shook his head violently to free the knife from his jaw. Trapped, Brant struggled to pull himself from the man's grip, but the man was stronger than he looked. So he did the only thing he could. He wrenched the knife from the man's jaw and slammed it into his left temple. As the blade struck home, the man's forward momentum carried him a few more steps. He leaned heavily against Brant, then fell to the pavement in a heap. Brant backed away from the body, shuddering as nausea welled up in his throat. He shook it off and took his first real look at the man who'd attacked him. He wasn't anyone Brant recognized, which was the best news he'd get all day. This man was too old to have been a current member of the military. He was around 70, thin and bony and wrinkled with age, hair white and sparse on his head. He was clad in dirtied sweatpants and a blood-stained white bathrobe, his feet bare and torn from running without shoes on the cold, unforgiving streets and sidewalks of Atlanta. The elderly man was definitely a civilian, possibly from one of the local nursing homes. Judging by the crusted blood under his lengthening, yellowed fingernails, the man had been ill for at least 4 days. Brant grasped the hilt of his knife and pulled it free from the man's temple. It slid away from the bone and flesh with an indescribable sound that made him shudder in disgust. He took a moment to wipe the blood from the blade onto the edge of the dead man's bathrobe. He had no desire to continue his exam of the body. He looked instead to the Beretta lying on the wet pavement. The weapon was empty and wouldn't do him any further good. The chances he'd find much suitable ammunition for it in a city under siege were slim, and searching for it wasn't worth his time. The general populace had days before raided the gun shops and sports stores in the city for anything usable that had been left behind by the military, and all of the ammunition shelves were likely bare. Nevertheless,